My name is Kaylin Rivers. And when I received the invitation, I thought it was a joke. A gold-embossed envelope with hand-lettered calligraphy. The kind of paper that felt expensive just to hold. Smelled like lavender and smugness. Inside, a perfectly designed wedding invitation with soft blush tones and minimalist serif font. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Sabrina Linhart and Aaron Thomas. At Rosevale Vineyard, October 17th, 4 p.m. Sabrina, my ex-best friend. Aaron, my ex-boyfriend. Together. At a wedding. And they had the audacity to invite me. It took me 3 tries to read it all the way through. The first time, my hands trembled too much to see the words clearly. The second, I threw it across the kitchen table halfway through the sentence, reception to follow. Semi-formal attire encouraged. By the third read I laughed. Loud. Too loud. Alone in my apartment. Not because it was funny. 'Cause it was audacious. Strategic. Insulting. And suddenly so very clear. They weren't inviting me out of guilt. They were inviting me out of spite. This wasn't a mistake. It was a message. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The invitation spread out like an open wound. My tea went cold. My phone buzzed once. A reminder for a team meeting I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to attend. Because the ghosts I'd buried 2 years ago just RSVP'd to my piece. Back then, Sabrina and I were inseparable. We'd been friends since college. Roommates, confidants, 2 halves of the same wildly ambitious whole. She was the dreamer. I was the doer. Together we were unstoppable. Aaron came into the picture later. We met at a networking mixer. He was charming, charismatic, and sharp in a way that felt like stepping into sunlight. Sabrina introduced us. Ernie, I know. For a while everything was golden. We'd triple date, plan vacations, late night drinks, inside jokes. Sabrina even joked once. If we all moved in together, I'd never get bored again. I laughed. Because back then, I didn't know I was feeding the very mouths that would devour me. The unraveling happened slowly. That's how betrayals survive. They rot quietly. Aaron got distant. Sabrina got secretive. There were glances I wasn't meant to catch. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Then one day, I came home early from a cancelled meeting and found Sabrina leaving my apartment. Alone. With Aaron's spare hoodie in her bag. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. They didn't deny it. Not really. Aaron said it just happened. Sabrina said she never meant to fall for him. I said nothing. Because you don't argue with poison. You let it sit. You observe. You learn. Left. No dramatic scene. No screaming. Just gone. Changed my number. Switched jobs. Moved cities. And rebuilt everything from the ground up. Quietly. Alone. And now, 2 years later, they sent me an invitation with a gold foil RSVP card. What a performance. I was supposed to decline, right? Be the bigger person. Walk away again. But something inside me pulsed. A slow, simmering truth I hadn't let myself touch in years. They expected me to disappear again. They expected shame. They expected silence. Instead, I ordered a new dress. Over the next few days, I watched their wedding website unfold like a slow train wreck. Hashtag Irina Forever. Cute. A timeline of their love story, conveniently omitting how it started in betrayal. Photo shoots in vineyards. Posed candid smiles. A registry that included a $500 teakwood salad bowl. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled, until I got to the seating chart. And there it was. Name. Table 9. Misfits and old flames. They really labeled the table that. My roommates. An ex-girlfriend of Aaron's from high school. A former friend Sabrina once ghosted after college. A bartender who apparently dated both of them in some twisted timeline. It wasn't just an invitation. It was a public execution. A neatly wrapped humiliation. That's when I decided. If they wanted a show, give them one. Called in a favor. 2 actually. First I reached out to Tasha. my old college roommate turned event planner who now worked high-end weddings. I need you to get me every piece of info on the Linhart Thomas wedding at Rosevale Vineyard. She hesitated. You sure you want to walk into that kind of chaos, Kay? Not walk in, I said. Walk through. Only. And on fire. The second call was to Mason, a tech-savvy friend who owed me for bailing him out of an intellectual property disaster last year. Mason, I said, can you pull a digital footprint on a couple without alerting them? Define footprint. Emails. Hidden photos. Burner accounts. Suspicious money movement. Anything dirty. His pause told me everything. You finally going nuclear? He asked. Smiled. Not nuclear. Surgical. In the meantime I bought my dress. Not flashy. Not revenge red. Black. Bleak. Elegant. The kind of black that doesn't scream, look at me. It just makes everyone else feel underdressed. And I started writing a speech. Not out of bitterness. Out of precision. Because if they were going to hand me a microphone, I was going to speak. The RSVPs were due in 1 week. I mailed mine early. Checked yes. Wrote in perfect cursive. Can't wait to celebrate you both. No one would suspect. Not yet. But that was the point. Because revenge tastes best when it's unexpected. And cold. Like the champagne I'd be holding when I made my toast. I wasn't expecting the envelope. Not from them. It arrived on a Wednesday. Thick, ivory paper sealed in wax like some royal decree. The kind of wedding invitation people frame and hang on the walls of homes they'll never afford without debt. My name was written in gold script across the front. No return address. Just their names. Delicately embossed at the top of the card inside. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Avery Lynn Mercer and Daniel Elias Hart. My stomach dropped. Avery. Daniel. 2 names I hadn't said aloud in a year. 2 people who used to be my entire world. Until they gutted me with a betrayal so calculated, I had to learn how to breathe again without crying. And now, they were inviting me to celebrate them. First I laughed. A short, sharp sound that echoed off the apartment walls like a glass cracking. I read the invitation again. Over and over. As if somewhere in the fine print it would reveal itself as a mistake. Mix-up. Sick joke. But no. My name was spelled perfectly. My address accurate. Even the RSVP link included a custom code with my initials. I set the card down and stared at the ceiling. Why would they invite me? Was it guilt? A peace offering? Or was it something worse? I hadn't spoken to either of them in nearly a year. Not since the night everything imploded. Avery and I had been best friends since middle school. She was the louder one, the star in every room, the kind of girl who got away with cruelty because she wrapped it in charm. And I was the safe one. Planner. The listener. The girl everyone trusted. And Daniel had been mine. Until he wasn't. Until the day I walked into Avery's apartment and found his shirt on her floor. The silence that followed was louder than any confession. Neither of them denied it. They didn't even look guilty. They just stood there. Avery in her silk robe, Daniel with his hands in his pockets, like I was interrupting something they had every right to enjoy. I remember Avery's words, cold as ice. You always knew we had chemistry. You just didn't want to admit it. And Daniel, he said nothing. Not even my name. I moved cities after that. Blocked them. Deleted old photos. Burned journals. I rebuilt my life in silence. And it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't empowering. It was survival. Grief, when it comes from betrayal, has no tidy ending. You don't just move on. You carry it, like shards of glass under your skin. You learn to smile without bleeding. You learn how to be invisible to the people who once knew every version of you. So when that invitation arrived, I knew. This wasn't reconciliation. It was performance. An act of cruelty wrapped in confetti. They wanted me to see it. To sit in the audience and watch them say the vows he once rehearsed in my kitchen. They wanted to parade their victory like it came without casualties. And I was supposed to smile through it. supposed to clap when they kissed, supposed to cry with joy instead of history. But what they didn't know was this. I had buried the girl who would have taken that seat quietly. The one who would have gritted her teeth and swallowed her dignity. The woman who rose in her place. She came with a pen. And she never forgot the truth. I didn't RSVP right away. I spent 2 days rereading the card, running my fingers over the raised print. And then I checked the wedding website. I wasn't surprised to see the design was sleek and modern. White background, gold trim. Their engagement photos took up the homepage. Daniel in a tailored gray suit. Avery laughing into his chest like she hadn't stolen the breath out of my lungs a year ago. I clicked on the RSVP tab. My name auto-filled at the top. Guest count 1. Seating assignment. Table 9. Legacy circle. Legacy circle. I nearly choked on my own breath. That wasn't a wedding term. It was a nickname from college. A private inside joke. For the people Avery considered beneath her. Old friends she kept around for optics. The legacy people. Reliable, boring, replaceable. It was a slap in the face so cleanly delivered, I almost admired the precision. She wanted me there. Not as a guest, as a prop. To be seen. To be pitted. To be conquered. So I said yes. Not because I forgave them. Not because I missed them. But because they'd made one fatal mistake. They invited a woman they thought was still wounded. But I wasn't bleeding anymore. I was watching. And I knew things. Secrets. Things you only learn when people think they can trust you with their ugly. And if they wanted me at their wedding, then I would give them exactly what they asked for. A celebration. One they'd never forget. Have you ever walked into a room where every single laugh sounds like it might be about you? Where every side glance, every whisper, carries your name just under its breath? That was the kind of wedding Avery planned. It wasn't just a ceremony. It was a performance. And I was cast in the role of the ex-best friend who lost. Uli. I wasn't reading from their script anymore. Let me back up. Before the wedding, before the betrayal, before I became that girl on their guest list, there was us. Me, Avery, Daniel. We were a trio. The kind that could finish each other's sentences, share playlists, and sit in silence for hours without it being weird. Avery and I met in 8th grade. She had braces and glitter gel pens. I had hand-me-down sneakers and a quiet laugh. She was all fire and chaos. I was her anchor. She used to say, "You keep me from burning everything down." I didn't realize back then that sometimes the person holding the hose is the first to drown. Daniel came later. College. Teddy. A quiet kind of charming. He wasn't like the other guys Avery chased. He was grounded. Kind. I met him at a poetry reading. He made some sarcastic comment about slam poets using too many metaphors, and I laughed harder than I should have. We dated for 3 years. Until the night I found his voice on Avery's voicemail. Not as a friend, not as a slip, but as a man in love with her. I remember calling her that night. No yelling, no accusations, just a simple question. Why? And her answer still haunts me. Because I could. And because you never fought to keep him. Like love was something to be fought for. As if I'd ever had a chance against someone who collected people like souvenirs. So yes, I had every reason to ignore that wedding invitation. To tear it in half and call it closure. But I didn't. Because closure is a myth. And sometimes, the only way to end a chapter is to read it out loud in front of everyone who tried to write it for you. The wedding was held at a private estate 2 hours outside the city. Rustic elegance. String lights. Flower arches. I arrived 30 minutes early, on purpose. I wanted to see everything before it started. The place was already buzzing. White-gloved staff. Champagne towers. Photographers circling like vultures around people desperate to look like they belonged. And there, right near the main archway, stood her, Avery. Hair perfectly styled into a low bun. Custom lace gown. Champagne flute in hand. He turned, saw me, and smiled like nothing had ever happened. "Look who showed up," she said, as if we were still 16 and gossiping about math teachers. "Avery, you look surprisingly polished." I let the insult hang in the air like cheap perfume. "Must be the lighting." Daniel appeared seconds later. Still tall. Still handsome in that vanilla, clean-jawed way. But his eyes flickered when he saw me. Breath. That microsecond of panic you can't fake. I held his gaze and offered a smile I didn't mean. "Daniel." He cleared his throat. "Glad you made it." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. And I meant it. Just not the way they thought. The ceremony was exactly what you'd expect from two narcissists who found each other in a house of mirrors. Personal vows. Live acoustic set. Of literal doves. And I sat there, table 9 legacy circle, in a seat they picked for me. Surrounded by people I hadn't seen in years. Old classmates, ex-co-workers. Cousins Avery once called filler friends. They whispered. Some pitied me. Some were waiting for me to cry. I didn't. Smiled. Because I wasn't there to fall apart. I was there to pay attention. Every wedding has cracks. Little things that don't make it to Instagram. And if you know what to look for, you start to see them. The tense exchange between the groom and the maid of honor. The flask in the best man's jacket. The slip in the mother of the bride's voice when she called the ceremony ambitious. Took mental notes. Tiny truths. Little secrets. Because if they wanted me here, sitting like a ghost of the past, I was going to haunt them properly. After the ceremony, during cocktail hour, I found myself near the open bar. A girl I vaguely recognized leaned in. "You're..." "Yeah," I said. "The ex." "Something like that." She bit her lip. "Weird they invited you." I mean you dated him forever, right?" 3 years. Her eyes widened. "That's cold. You have no idea." That night, back in my hotel room, I opened my laptop. Pulled up a blank document. Titled it, "The Toast." 'Cause yes, they asked me to give one. Not a formal speech. Not part of the wedding party. But at the reception, during the open floor toasts. Avery even wrote it in the program. "Special thanks to old friends who've stayed true. We're excited to hear from you." I knew it was bait. She was daring me to speak. Hoping I'd either make a fool of myself or back out and prove I was weak. But I'd already made my decision. I wasn't walking away quietly. The toast would be honest. Simple. Memorable. Not loud. Not emotional. Just true. And I had all night to get the wording perfect. There's something terrifyingly artificial about weddings. The smell of rented florals. The stiff smiles in group photos. The hours of polite conversation dressed in silk and champagne. But behind the curated playlist and color-coordinated centerpieces, that's where the truth lives. And I was there to find it. The morning after the ceremony, I slipped out of the hotel before the brunch crowd could gather. The estate was quiet, too quiet. But that's the thing about silence. It makes the whispers louder. I wandered the grounds, coffee in hand, and watched the crew set up for the reception. White chairs, ivory runners, gold-rimmed glasses, Avery's style. All status, no soul. I leaned against a column, sipped my drink, and listened. Did you see the seating chart? They put a mirror at the misfits table. Savage. I heard she used to live with Avery. Like as in rent-free. I smiled behind the rim of my cup. They didn't know I was listening. Didn't know I remembered every name, every story. And every skeleton still hanging quietly in Avery's guest closet. Mid-morning I ran into Talia, Avery's old college roommate. We hugged like nothing had changed. But I could feel the tension in her grip. "You look amazing," she said. "Thanks. You too. Big of you to come. Wasn't gonna miss it." She leaned in, lowered her voice. "You know, you're not the only one Avery's burned." I tilted my head. "Oh," she hesitated. "I'm not saying anything. Just watch the maid of honor." Filed that away. Talia didn't talk unless there was something real behind it. And the maid of honor was Avery's cousin Lila. Pretty, Polish, The girl who always smiled too wide at family parties. Something was brewing there. I could feel it. At the welcome brunch I played my part. Smiled at people who looked through me. Took compliments with grace. Endured Avery's speech about gathering everyone we love and trust most. The whole time I watched, listened, collected. Because once you stop trying to be accepted, you start seeing everything. Like the way Daniel flinched every time Lila touched his arm. Or how Avery kept checking her phone under the table. Or the whisper fight between Avery's mom and the wedding planner about the rehearsal incident. Rehearsal incident. That was new. I needed more. Later that night, I wandered into the wine bar on the lower level of the estate. Dim lights, velvet booths. It was nearly empty. Just the groomsmen and a few stragglers. One of them, Josh, recognized me from college. We'd had one class together. He was harmless. Too honest for his own good. He waved me over. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. "Didn't expect to be invited." He laughed awkwardly. "They said it was your idea." And blinked. "What?" "Avery told people you asked to come. Said you wanted closure." I felt the heat rise in my chest. Not anger. Calculation. They were rewriting the story already. And framing me as the pathetic one. Smiled. "Classic Avery." Josh leaned in, voice lower. "Between you and me. Something's off with Daniel." "Off how?" He hesitated. "I don't think he wanted this." "Not really. He's been off since Vegas." Vegas. The bachelor party. Filed that away. Something had happened. Something they didn't want known. But I would know it. By morning, I left the bar and texted the one person who might still owe me something. Kyle. Daniel's oldest friend. We'd bonded years ago. Shared playlists, late night talks while Avery and Daniel fought in the background. He'd always liked me. Maybe still did. Kept it short. "Hey, I know this is random, but if you know something about this wedding, tell me, please." Took 10 minutes. He replied, "It's not a real marriage." He didn't propose. She did. After she found out about him and Lila. My breath caught. Lila. His cousin's fiancée. Oh. His bride's cousin. The maid of honor. I replied, "Are you sure?" Kyle. He was drunk. It was a mistake. But Avery found out and said, "Either we make this official or I make it public." My fingers shook. Because that was the wedge. That was the rot under all the lace and love songs. And that toast. It had just found its ending. The next day, hours before the reception, I sat in my hotel room with my notes. I drafted lines. Scratched some out. Rewrote. This wouldn't be dramatic. It wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Like a scalpel. Because revenge doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it comes dressed in a satin dress and a glass of white wine. And when you lift your glass in a room full of liars, they never see the knife in your words. I walked into the reception with the same confidence I once reserved for job interviews and funerals. Controlled. Polish. I wore a midnight blue gown with a slit just high enough to command attention. Not desperate. Deliberate. Avery saw me and blinked. She hadn't expected me to look powerful. She waved me over. "So glad you made it," she said. "I told you I would." Her eyes narrowed. "Ready to toast." I held her gaze. "I've never been more ready. I've always been a list maker. When I was younger, I'd make grocery lists for my mom, homework schedules, dream job checklists. I found peace in order. Safety in knowing what came next. So it only made sense that, before I gave the toast that would change the temperature of a very expensive room, I made one more list. Not of names, not of memories, but of truths. One truth for every year they lied to me. 7 years of friendship with Avery. 3 years of love with Daniel. And 1 year of silence since they wrecked me. Truth number 1. Daniel didn't write his vows. I learned this from the planner's assistant, who mistook me for a cousin and spilled everything. He handed them in 5 days ago, typed. Said he wanted them reviewed before Avery saw them. Weird, right? Not weird. Calculated. Controlled. Which made me wonder. What had he said that needed revising? I didn't have access to the original draft. But I didn't need it. Because sometimes what people don't say tells you more than what they do. Truth number 2. Avery's relationship with Lila was fractured. After the rehearsal dinner, I found Lila crying in the garden behind the estate. Alone. She froze when she saw me, eyes red, mascara trailing. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm not here to gloat." She sniffled. "I didn't think you'd come. I'm not here for her." She nodded. Then after a pause, "She thinks marrying him will fix it." "What's broken?" She looked me dead in the eyes. "Everything." Truth number 3. The best man, Josh, was harboring a secret of his own. He approached me at the bar during cocktail hour, his second whiskey in hand. "You know what's funny?" he said. "Probably not. I helped him pick out a ring 2 years ago. For you." My breath caught. "What?" "Yeah." He chickened out. Said Avery told him you weren't ambitious enough. I stared at him. "He bought a ring." "Yup." Showed it to me. It was honestly perfect. But she got in his head. That was the moment something inside me stopped aching. Because I realized Daniel had been swayed not by love, but by strategy. Truth number 4. Avery didn't love Daniel either. I saw it in the way she performed. Every smile too wide. Every babe too loud. Love doesn't need that much spotlight. Desperation does. Later that night, I overheard her on the phone, through the bathroom wall in the guest wing. "I did what I had to do, Mom. No, I'm not backing out now. If I let him walk, I lose everything. Not love. Not happiness. Leverage." I copied each truth into my notes app under one word. Toast. Each line a thread I would pull gently, carefully. I didn't want a scene. I wanted a reveal. The reception hall was glowing when I arrived. The band played soft jazz. Candles flickered along long banquet tables dressed in ivory and gold. I took my seat, back corner, still table 9, and watched the dominoes line up. The speeches started. First the parents, then the maid of honor. Lila's voice trembled through her entire speech. She called Avery unbreakable, which felt more like a warning than a compliment. Then the best man. He made jokes about Daniel's fear of commitment. Few chuckles. Few knowing looks. And then the mic was offered to the room. "Anyone else want to share a memory or toast the couple?" Avery turned to me. Smiled. Nudged the mic in my direction. Her eyes said, "Go ahead. Show them you've moved on." I stood. Took the microphone with calm hands. And walked slowly to the center of the room. You could hear the shift. Forks stopped clinking. The band quieted. A wall of breathless attention settled over the reception. Smiled. "Hi everyone. I'm Amira. Some of you know me. Some of you only know of me." Few awkward chuckles. I wasn't originally planning to speak. But weddings are about honesty, right? About celebrating the truth behind the love. Pause. Let that word ring. Truth. Continued. I've known the bride and groom for a long time. Long enough to remember when Avery said she'd never get married. When Daniel said he wasn't ready. Long enough to know that sometimes life has surprises. They laughed. Smiled. Not sweet. Not malicious. Surgical. And I think what surprises me most is how much we don't talk about what brings two people together. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Avery shifted in her seat. I remember when Daniel used to call me at 2 a.m. to ask if he was making the right choices. And when Avery once told me she didn't believe in forever, just strategy. Hush fell. Of course people change. Another sip of champagne. And secrets. Well, they have a funny way of making their way to the surface. It was like how the engagement was never really a question, but an ultimatum. Avery's face froze. People started murmuring. Kept my tone light. Or how the vows were rewritten by a lawyer instead of a heart. A visible flinch from Daniel. And how love Real love doesn't start in betrayal and end in silence. I raised my glass. To the happy couple, may the truth always follow you, no matter how far you run. Silence. Glass touching lips. Then the sound of whispers. Then footsteps. Then the bride excusing herself from her own reception. There are two kinds of silence. The kind that comforts, and the kind that lingers like smoke after something has burned. That reception hall was drowning in the second kind. My glass was still in my hand, the stem cool between my fingers, when Avery fled the room. She didn't run, not exactly. She walked out fast and tight, head high, back stiff, but everyone could see it. The queen was cracked, and queens don't crack. Not on their wedding night, unless the crown was never real to begin with. Lila was the first to chase her. She muttered something under her breath. I couldn't catch it, and disappeared into the hallway. Daniel stayed seated for a full 10 seconds, just staring at me. Not rage, not confusion, just the hollow stare of a man who had no idea what cards he was holding until the table flipped. The room was still. Some guests looked at me with awe, others like I was the villain, but most, they were riveted, because no one at that table, at table 9, had ever been given a front row seat to someone reclaiming power so quietly. Someone took a sip of wine, then someone else coughed, and just like that life resumed, but not the same. I walked calmly back to my seat, sat down, folded my napkin over my lap like I hadn't just shattered their favorite fairy tale. One of the cousins leaned toward me. That was, she whispered. God, that was ice cold. I smiled gently. No, that was warm honesty. It took 20 minutes for Avery to return. She'd swapped her heels for flats. Her lipstick was gone. So was her smile. Daniel stood when he saw her, tried to kiss her cheek. She flinched. That flinch was louder than my toast. They resumed the reception like nothing happened. The band struck up a softer tune. Staff passed out plated desserts. Avery gave a half-hearted thank you to the guests, and tried to toast the night with a shaky voice. But the magic, the performance, suppose. Now every person there was watching not for celebration, but for collapse. I slipped out early. Not because I was afraid, because I'd already won. I didn't need to watch the fire burn once the match had been struck. I just needed fresh air. Outside, beneath the canopy of string lights and stars, I walked the stone paths of the estate garden. It was silent out there. A different kind of silence. The peaceful one. The earned one. I found a bench and sat, letting the evening hum around me. Then came the footsteps. I didn't turn, but I knew it was him. Daniel. He stopped behind me. Didn't say anything at first. Just breathed like he was trying to come up with a version of himself that didn't look so weak. You knew everything, he finally said. I didn't respond. Why did you say it like that? Turned then. Met his eyes. He looked tired. Not in the wedding is exhausting kind of way. In the I just realized my lies have a long shadow kind of way. I didn't lie, I said softly. I just held up a mirror. He dropped onto the bench beside me. Hands clasped, eyes forward. I never meant to hurt you. You did anyway. He flinched at that. Was it revenge? He asked. That toast? No, I said. It was a reminder. Of what? I looked up at the sky. That you can't erase people and expect them to stay silent. He stayed quiet after that. And when he stood to leave, he looked like a man who'd finally seen the edge of the lie he'd been living, and didn't like the drop. Back inside, the reception was thinning. Half the guests had already left early. Lila was nowhere in sight. I heard someone whisper that she and Avery had a scene in the bridal suite. No one shared details, but the maid of honor's absence said more than words could. I returned to my hotel room, removed my makeup in silence, and stared at my reflection. Same eyes, same lips, but a different girl than the one who'd opened that invitation weeks ago. She was gone. And what was left wasn't angry, wasn't bitter, just done. The next morning, a text from an unknown number hit my phone. "You won. I don't know how you did it, but you shattered everything she built. Thank you. L." I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it, because this was never about thanks. It was about balance, and now had been restored. I stood, wine glass in one hand, microphone in the other, and for a heartbeat, no one breathed. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just invite tension. It requires it. Avery sat at the head table, her hand curled around Daniel's arm like a warning. Daniel stared, his face already tense with the anticipation of something off script. 'Cause that's the thing about scripts. When you live your life rehearsing, any moment of honesty feels like chaos. I wasn't there to cause chaos. I was there to introduce the truth. Cleared my throat. Let the room settle into discomfort. "Hi everyone," I said. "I'm Amira. Some of you know me. Some of you used to." Few light laughs. Nervous ones. The kind people give when they sense danger but don't know where it's coming from yet. I wasn't sure I was going to speak tonight. I thought maybe the past belonged behind us, where so many people insisted it stay. Pause. Avery's mouth tightened. Daniel blinked once. But weddings are about honesty, right? About witnessing a promise built on something strong. Something real. I let that hang in the air. It was already in the room anyway. "I remember when Avery said she'd never get married," I continued. "She called it a performance. Said the dress, the vows, the seating charts. It was all one big show." Soft laughter from a distant table. Not everyone heard the sharpness in it, but those who knew her did. "And Daniel, he used to say love should be private. That the best kind was the kind no one had to prove." He shifted. So imagine my surprise, seeing the two of them up there today. Dressed like royalty. Swapping vows they didn't write. Reading promises that had been edited. Murmur. People began to stir. Smiled. Don't get me wrong, they looked beautiful. Really. Picture perfect. Like the kind of couple you find on brochures for marriage retreats. Lila, in the corner, stiffened. She knew. She knew. But see, the thing about perfection is, it's heavy, hard to maintain, especially when it's hiding so much underneath. Avery whispered something to Daniel. His jaw locked. Here's the part one hadn't told anyone. I wasn't just speaking to the room. I was speaking to her. The girl I used to be. The one who cried in the dark, wondering why she wasn't enough. The one who swallowed her pride so others could keep their comfort. She was still inside me, watching now, wide-eyed. And I wanted her to see what happens when you stop apologizing for being right. Love doesn't start with lies, I said. It doesn't grow through manipulation. And it sure as hell doesn't get stronger through silence. I scanned the room. You all see them tonight and think, fairy tale. Me. I see a deal. Avery's hand dropped from Daniel's arm. Daniel's mouth opened, then shut. I see a man who almost proposed to someone else. Who bought a ring, then changed his mind when the narrative didn't suit him. Silence. I see a woman who said, if I can't have your heart, I'll have your name. And I'll build a kingdom out of the ashes I leave behind. Cousins looked at each other. The planner froze. Lila dropped her champagne flute. I stepped forward. I see a couple who forgot that the people they stepped on. Remember. Male. Raise the glass. So here's to the happy couple. May your life be as honest as the story you tell tonight. And may the truth never be too far behind. Toasted. And drank. One long slow sip. Then I turned and walked off the stage. The silence cracked. Voices surged. People gasped, shifted, scattered. Avery stood too quickly, her chair clattering behind her. Daniel followed. I didn't look back. Not because I was afraid of what I'd caused, but because I already knew. The truth had landed. And no one in that room would leave untouched. Outside, the night air hit my face like applause. I didn't cry. Didn't shake. I just breathed. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying their shame. I had handed it right back. By the time I woke the next morning, the whispers had already turned into wildfire. There were messages on my phone from numbers I didn't recognize. What happened last night? Did you mean to say all that? Are they really done? And the one that stood out most. You said what everyone else was too scared to. I didn't reply, because it wasn't about applause. It was about peace. I checked out of the hotel before sunrise, walked the quiet halls, past the glitter-strewn floor of the ballroom, and slipped through the side exit unnoticed. The wedding was technically over, but the performance, that would unravel in slow motion. And I didn't need to watch the curtain fall. I'd already taken my bow. Still, I heard the fallout secondhand. Lila posted a cryptic Instagram story later that night. Sometimes keeping secrets makes you part of the lie. It vanished within an hour. But the damage stuck. One of the groomsmen messaged me. Daniel was furious. Said you humiliated them. But I think he's just mad you told the truth out loud. Another message, this time from Kyle, the only one who warned me. She slapped him. In front of her parents. He didn't fight back. And then finally, silence. No more whispers. No more text. No more invitations to pretend. 3 days later the headlines followed. Not tabloids, nothing that big. But blogs, local gossip accounts, comments on public wedding posts, tension at Mercer Hart wedding. Family drama explodes at lavish ceremony. Maid of honor missing from reception photos. Why? They tried to scrub my toast from the official footage. But they couldn't delete the guests who recorded it on their phones. Clips went viral in their corner of social media. Not millions of views. But enough. Enough to ruin their curated story. 1 week later I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. Everys, you made your point. I underestimated you. I thought bringing you there would make me feel powerful again. But instead I watched you stand in a room full of people and say the one thing I never could. The truth. You were never weak. I just made you feel small so I wouldn't have to admit how strong you were. We're not speaking again. I know that. But I needed you to know. You were always the one with the mirror. I just hated what I saw in it. No apology. Just admission. And that was enough. I didn't keep the letter. I didn't frame it or tuck it away like a trophy. I burned it. Watched the paper curl and blacken until it was ash between my fingers. Because I wasn't carrying them anymore. Their mistakes, their shame, their noise. They could keep it. I had other things to carry now. 2 months later I gave my own toast. At a small dinner party. Friends. Real ones. No champagne towers. No flower arches. Just laughter that didn't ask for an audience. I stood, glass in hand, and smiled. This time last year, I said, I thought closure came from getting even. From saying the thing that would echo. But now I know. The loudest sound in the world is walking away, without needing permission. They raised their glasses. And this time, the clinking meant peace. I don't think about them often anymore. Not because I forgot, but because they've become something else. Story I lived through. Fire I walked out of. A shadow that used to follow me. But now, cast my own. I scanned the room. You all see them tonight and think, fairy tale. Me. I see a deal. Avery's hand dropped from Daniel's arm. Daniel's mouth opened, then shut. I see a man who almost proposed to someone else. Who bought a ring, then changed his mind when the narrative didn't suit him. Silence. I see a woman who said, if I can't have your heart, I'll have your name. And I'll build a kingdom out of the ashes I leave behind. Cousins looked at each other. The planner froze. Lila dropped her champagne flute. I stepped forward. I see a couple who forgot that the people they stepped on. Remember. Male. Raise the glass. So here's to the happy couple. May your life be as honest as the story you tell tonight. And may the truth never be too far behind. Toasted. And drank. One long slow sip. Then I turned and walked off the stage. The silence cracked. Voices surged. People gasped, shifted, scattered. Avery stood too quickly, her chair clattering behind her. Daniel followed. I didn't look back. Not because I was afraid of what I'd caused, but because I already knew. The truth had landed, and no one in that room would leave untouched. Outside, the night air hit my face like applause. I didn't cry, didn't shake, I just breathed, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying their shame. I had handed it right back. By the time I woke the next morning, the whispers had already turned into wildfire. There were messages on my phone from numbers I didn't recognize. What happened last night? Did you mean to say all that? Are they really done? And the one that stood out most. You said what everyone else was too scared to. I didn't reply. Because it wasn't about applause. It was about peace. I checked out of the hotel before sunrise. Walked the quiet halls, past the glitter-strewn floor of the ballroom, and slipped through the side exit unnoticed. The wedding was technically over, but the performance, that would unravel in slow motion. And I didn't need to watch the curtain fall. I'd already taken my bow. Still, I heard the fallout secondhand. Lila posted a cryptic Instagram story later that night. Sometimes keeping secrets makes you part of the lie. It vanished within an hour. But the damage stuck. One of the groomsmen messaged me. Daniel was furious. Said you humiliated them. But I think he's just mad you told the truth out loud. Another message, this time from Kyle, the only one who warned me. She slapped him. In front of her parents. He didn't fight back. And then finally, silence. No more whispers. No more text. No more invitations to pretend. 3 days later the headlines followed. Not tabloids, nothing that big. But blogs, local gossip accounts, comments on public wedding posts. Tension at Mercer Hart wedding. Family drama explodes at lavish ceremony. Maid of honor missing from reception photos. Why? They tried to scrub my toast from the official footage. But they couldn't delete the guests who recorded it on their phones. Clips went viral in their corner of social media. Not millions of views, but enough. Enough to ruin their curated story. 1 week later I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. Everys, you made your point. I underestimated you. I thought bringing you there would make me feel powerful again. But instead I watched you stand in a room full of people and say the one thing I never could. The truth. You were never weak. I just made you feel small so I wouldn't have to admit how strong you were. We're not speaking again. I know that. But I needed you to know. You were always the one with the mirror. I just hated what I saw in it. No apology. Just admission. And that was enough. I didn't keep the letter. I didn't frame it or tuck it away like a trophy. I burned it. Watched the paper curl and blacken until it was ash between my fingers. Because I wasn't carrying them anymore. Their mistakes, their shame, their noise. They could keep it. I had other things to carry now. 2 months later I gave my own toast. At a small dinner party. Friends. Real ones. No champagne towers. No flower arches. Just laughter that didn't ask for an audience. I stood, glass in hand, and smiled. This time last year, I said, I thought closure came from getting even. From saying the thing that would echo. But now I know. The loudest sound in the world is walking away, without needing permission. They raised their glasses. And this time, the clinking meant peace. I don't think about them often anymore. Not because I forgot, but because they've become something else. Story I lived through. Fire I walked out of. A shadow that used to follow me. But now, cast my own.